Um, there we go. So I mean, for let's just say like no one knows who you are. Do you want to give like just a real quick like 20-second intro into sort of like you, maybe a little bit about like the business as a whole and who you work with as well?
Yeah, so I'm Laura Savino. I have a business called Elevated Pursuit Nutrition, which is primarily what we're going to talk about today. We do nutrition coaching. We have a kind of a unique offer in that we do very small cohort but high touch groups. So it's 10 people max, and you go through a very specific nutrition phase with everybody in your group. And I have a team of three other coaches that work for me, or one partner and two coaches that work for me. And our goal is to help, generally speaking, 90% of our clients are about women aged 30 to 55 who have been through the ringer on nutrition coaches that do shitty jobs. And we go and undo some of the shitty jobs they had with prior coaches and teach them how to coach themselves moving forward.
How did you land on that specific like structure of like the cohort base rather than going down like the more traditional route?
Yeah, so we do one-on-one and we have traditional kind of
Yeah.
like coaching models, but my I came from like a group background from a coaching platform. And in college, this is like way back, but in college, I paid for rent, and groceries, teaching, doing student teaching for like calculus and math classes, and using the group environment was like my preferred method because teaching people how to do it for themselves versus doing it for them is much more interesting to me. And I just felt there had to be a better way to not keep people on the gravy train for forever. Not good for business, but good for them in that we teach them how to learn how to do it themselves. And that was the thing that I wanted. I didn't want something to just give me macros and tell me what to change every week. I wanted to understand the big plan. And the what we have built over the last couple of years is teaching people how to build their own plan. And so it's taken some time and some refinement, but that was my goal going into it. It's like I don't want to just do the thing that everybody else is doing. It's like, how do I get the people who are like me, who want to actually understand the nuts and bolts of the process and why we're making those adjustments? So we have a very specific clientele that does like to understand those nuts and bolts. They don't necessarily want to be just told what to do. Um, or our one-on-one clients sign up for that instead. So
How did you this is going to get us into like the marketing idea, but like this is a bit broader though. How did you get into like obviously you had your idea around that's who you were and that's the clients that you wanted to attract.
mm,
How did that forge a lot of like your content in general and just sort of the messaging that you put out so that you attracted those people rather than it being like the people who just wanted the result and then because that's like
mhm.
goes against like a lot of marketing, right? Almost like
Yes.
selling the vacation. Oh, we'll just get you this amazing result and then your life would be so much better. You're selling the teaching or the process in a way which is quite
Yes.
unique. So how have you gone about
Um, by doing just that. So I'm gonna be honest, guys, here's a insider hack is that if you go on my Instagram feed and you downloaded every single post, that would be 70% of what I'm gonna tell you in a group setting that you're gonna pay me to tell you that you could read on my Instagram. However, if you go read that in your Instagram, but have the no context about how to apply it to your life, you're really gonna struggle because you don't know how to look at yourself yet. And so my marketing has a lot more to do with I'm going to tell you how to do it yourself. And then a lot of these people go and try and they're like, oh, here, like very, very niche how-to guides. If you were to like distill my Instagram down to what I share, and some of them are personal or they're driven by questions. Like, they're like, oh, hey, I want to be able to do this. How? So I go, I'm going to make a post that's going to show you exactly how to do this one niche thing. Sometimes it gets 10 likes, sometimes it gets 100 because it resonates with that person. So 90% of our marketing is how to do the things, but then relate to it in a way that why it's important or understand. Like somebody's like, hey, it's farmers market season. I like to go to bakeries. Oh, do you know how many people like to go to bakeries in the summer and in farmers market season? Like I am the number one fan of bakeries in the summer. So I have a guide that shows you how to track your summer farmers market bakeries. And then it goes, oh, would you like to learn more about this? Comment and I'll send you the guide, join the email list, yada yada. I'll further expand. I've proven that I already know what I'm talking about. And let me show you other things because if you like this, you're probably like that. And then that's really how it's not like a huge plan, but if somebody asks me a question twice, it goes on the list to make a post. Somebody asks it 5 times, it becomes on the list to make it a post this week. And that's
that? Nice.
yeah. Not the most thought out strategy, but it has served us pretty well so far.
No, I like that because like I know speaking to other coaches, like they struggle to come up with like ideas. Obviously, so many are like relying on like AI and all this stuff to like come up with like, okay, here's what I need to talk about. It's such a simple alternative. I
Yes.
really like the idea of like if someone just asks it twice, then that just becomes a post.
Yeah.
And it's like I do like the idea of like just mini how-to guides because yeah, like you said, it has like its own basis in it builds you as an authority because you're showing people that you know what you're talking about rather than it being like a you're trying to I guess like the whole like entertainment factor where you build like you have like over the top personality that might be good and get attention, but again, it doesn't really help coaches stand out as like someone worth listening to or someone trusting with their money to help them actually achieve a goal. So I like that. How is that then fed into, well, what's different then with let's say the back end around like the email marketing side?
Yeah.
Because you, from what I've seen, you take a slightly different approach than the content.
Yeah. Yeah, my emails are a completely different like if than what our socials are. So our socials are guides in ways like kind of I almost consider the social like a business card. If I need to share a small piece of information, I know it's listed there in a visually appealing format that's smart and digestible. But if you've made it to the email list, I'm assuming that you like me a little bit. And my email list has is where my true personality shines a little bit, for better or for worse. And one of the things I think I actually, you might have said this first, but uh, if I get an equal number of responses to unsubscribes to an email, I feel really good about it because it means that I've filtered out some people who don't like me. And then the people who do like me are like, oh my God, this really resonated with me, which happened yesterday. But emails tend to be a lot more just little life nuggets sprinkled or nutrition nuggets or something sprinkled into something that's gone on in my life, which I mostly learned from you because I wanted to, like, relationally, that's how I always showed up on Instagram, but I didn't really know how to write the emails until, I don't know, maybe that conversation I had with Dan 2 years ago, with Apotheo. And then I got on your email list. I was like, oh, Brett writes emails that I'm actually interested in opening. That's how I like to talk to people, but I've never thought about translating that to like that written format because that written the emails need to be like, oh, formatted with like very specific call to actions, yada yada yada. And I was like, oh, it's so much more easy to write about the stuff that I would normally just say on like maybe a longer drawn out Instagram story about a story. But now nobody listens to those stories, but they're just click, click, click through because it's not that visually interesting, but they like to read it. And so um the email side, I have like kind of a weekly email that goes to my people. It's always weekly, um, throughout the year, and sometimes I add on more. But the weekly email could be something along the lines of the last couple have been I got a Lindsay Lohan haircut. Uh, what are you doing tonight? Question mark. But in the Gen Z style of WYD tonight.
Oh
So,
yeah.
and then I went to a funeral this week. Um, and then a couple, yeah, that's kind of like my last four that I sent, and usually it's just kind of a relational thing. For example, I got a Lindsay Lohan haircut because I waited to the last minute to find a hairdresser on a Saturday morning, and I did indeed get a Parent Trap Lindsay Lohan haircut. But I was like, "Are you going to wait to the last minute to sign up?" But now it's not the haircut time slot you want is not available. Well, our cohorts are also closing tomorrow, so if you don't sign up now, you may not have a slot in the one that you want. And so, taking something that is uber relatable in a non-fitness format and making it something very boring and mundane, but putting a little fun spin on it and sometimes sugarcoating it, sometimes not. Sometimes it just is what it is, and then translating that into how you can either apply that from a nutrition or fitness perspective or lead into some sort of call to action or just be like, hey, like, this is a life lesson I had this week because I went to my husband's grandmother's funeral last week and like at some point, when are you going to wait to prioritize yourself? When we're at the funeral or like before then? So sometimes smack in the face, but
Yeah. Like
just
that.
depends from the heart.
Yeah, yeah. How did you what's your process then for do you have a process for like capturing those ideas when they come to you? And then
Yeah.
do you bank them in advance? Do you sort of like do you have a list of like ideas that you want to talk about or stories that you sort of like fall back on if you
Mhm.
need to write something, or is it just sort of winging it as you go through?
So I have a list on my phone. It's actually as a notes app on my phone of like the questions people ask. So like post ideas and email ideas. Um, and I while I do have a couple like that are kind of that are like, oh, I really need to bank this one because it's a really good. Sometimes threading the needle from a hard sell to like a good story is sometimes like a squint and turn your head sideways. And you're like, oh, that sort of work, but like maybe it doesn't. So I have a couple banked for like those ones where I'm like, oh, I really want to pull out like the big guns. But 90% of the time, I'm gonna be honest, I like put all these on my phone, and then by the time it comes down to like Sunday when I want to write them, I'm like, I don't really feel like that anymore. And then like I have this other thing that just kind of comes from the heart. But what I do think is helpful is by putting all those kind of like ideas, and it's a very simple idea. For example, to be like, this client said something about this trainer she saw on Instagram, and then insert screenshot of trainer doing something dumb and whatever, like a 2 sentence idea, just enough to like put the idea down on paper. Um, and sometimes it'd be good in the moment, but like when I write down Sunday, that's just not what's gonna come out. But the thought process of like, ooh, how would I tell this as a story? How do I relate this is just as helpful as like writing the draft. And so when it comes to like Sunday night, I'll pick one of those, or I'll be like, oh, actually, you know what? I want to talk about this other thing. And then, but I've already been thinking about that process and putting in the reps of like, how do I want to tell a story? So yes, I have a list. I probably only use 10% of those ideas, and the rest of them just kind of sit there. And what comes out is what comes out.
Nice. How long does it, so when you sit down to write, how long does it take roughly to get your email out?
Um, 20 to 45 minutes.
Oh,
And then
nice.
sometimes they're real controversial and that okay, so for, I have the benefit of my husband being in HR. Also sometimes negative, and I'm like, this one might be a little spicy. So I'll read out to him. I was like, does this come across like I want it to come across? He's like, well, when you read it out loud in your voice, it does. He's like, on paper, absolutely not. You gotta like, and he's not that ruthless. Like honestly,
Yeah.
he's like he has a darker sense of humor than I do. So if he says I gotta like change something, I'm like, okay, that's gotta like I gotta maybe massage this or it won't come across. Or sometimes they'll say you need to change this. I'm like, no, I like it the way it is, and I press send anyways. So it just it kind of depends. But my process too, which I think is very maybe not helpful, is I don't always write it. I will voice to text it. Like I have a audio plugin because I want to have it to come across like a conversation. So I will say it how I would say it, say it
Mhm.
out loud, and then have the dictation software, and then I'll go back and edit it and massage it to like something that's a little bit easier to read. But sometimes if I think about writing it, it doesn't the written draft doesn't come out like I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Um, so that's something that helps me too.
Nice. I like that. And then what's because the objection I always get around the like telling like life stuff around your life is like it was the common thing around like speak to your audience, like almost like speak about them, make it about your audience, make it about their problems and stuff like that. So and you've sort of almost similar to me, you've gone against that in a way where you talk about yourself and talk a lot more about who you are and the things that are going on in your
Yeah.
life. What's the response been to those sorts of emails? Do you
Uh,
typically get responses like good or bad?
I usually get responses. I've very few gotten bad responses, but I also have a more definitely a higher female demographic, and I think they're just more likely to just hit the unsubscribe button than being like, you're an idiot and you don't know how to relate to me and I hate you. Um, so maybe that's like part of part of my demographic. But I do I haven't had an issue with the response, but I also really think about, is this relational or not? And there have been times I'm like, hey, I'm about to do something that 99% of you guys are not going to relate to. But I'm going to tell you about it because you may find yourself in a situation in life where you're taking a sabbatical and you have 3 months off and you get to go fuck around the mountains, which is what I did this spring. And like, you might find this relational. If not, like, here's some kind of interesting tidbits. Um, I haven't found that being like, I think if I just talk to my audience, it'd be like snooze fest. Like I have a lot of partners or friends, colleagues, whatever we call them in the space, that I subscribe their emails. I'm curious what they're saying. And like every time I was like, another email about sleep is better for fat loss or whatever. And I just nobody sometimes the tips are helpful, but I think people are so inundated right now that finding a way to have them relate to you, which may not make sense in the emails, But when I get into a consult call or somebody eventually schedules, like who knows? They could be on the email list for a year and a half or 2 years, and then finally be like, "Oh, I've scheduled a call." And like they come into it going, they feel very comfortable. They're like, "Oh, I already feel like I kind of know you." Like, "Oh, our husbands would be friends because they both like to barbecue, and you share barbecue recipes all the time." Or like, we both like the same TV show because you mentioned it and like whatever, whatever. And so we get into this, and it's never a hard sell. They're like, "Oh, I know that I'm a good personality fit. I just want to make sure that like this is going to work for my schedule or whatever." I never had a sales call be like, I need to like make sure that we would mesh or like I'm worried about it. They're already sold. It's just kind of closing from there.
Yeah.
So I from a even though it doesn't necessarily always translate to like a related somebody replies goes, "Oh my God, this is so me," which I do get those. Um it always comes out somewhat down the line. Or it'll come up going, "Oh, your email really resonated with me." Like I've had one but again, I talk to a lot of people because we have these small group cohorts. And she goes, "Oh, I read every email and I just feel like every single time you're talking to me." Because I'm like, yeah, because I am, because we really all share a lot of common, like I might be in a different spot in this journey, but like I can relate to where you have been in that spot, but I'd rather share it from like I can relate to you versus like, have you ever felt this way? Well, here's what you can do about it. Like barf.
I love it. And then you mentioned that actually that was the question I had because you mentioned the it might not always show up straight away, so it shows down the line. Do you pay attention then to many of like the metrics around your emails, like open rates, click-through rates, booking rates, or whatever? Like,
Yes.
do you pay much attention to those? And if so, what do you
Um,
look at?
I observe them. You know what I actually look at the most? So I do observe our open rate. So our email list is, I think, I don't know, small, medium. We're like just over 1,000. We've been
Mm.
fluctuating around there for a while. But and our open rates typically sit at like 60 to 70% ish, sometimes high 70s if it's really good. Um, Clicks, I don't really look at clicks because sometimes I don't put something to click on. So I'm not really worried about them clicking. Like it's that one's kind of very nebulous because if I put in like a recipe guide or like, oh shit, it's Memorial Day weekend and like here's my favorite shorts on sale. And if you live in the on the surface of the sun like I do, you probably need to buy them. Well, I had like 300 clicks, but that's a very relatable thing that people click
Love
on.
that.
What I think is interesting is I will go and find when people either unsubscribe or they finally do like click on a subscription. I go click into their profile and be like, when did you subscribe? Why did you subscribe? Was it like a freebie I shared? Was it a did you just like go to my link in bio and like subscribe? I'm curious where they came from. And then that might also help me indicate as to like why are they leaving. For example, like my number one unsubscriber is that I have free recipes because free recipes aren't necessarily a reason why you might want to do a nutrition course of this.
Mm.
But it does get just a lot of people on the email list. Not all of them, but they're like their number one subscribers, but they're also the number one unsubscribers too, is because they want the free recipe, but they're not necessarily that's not necessarily a lead magnet that really actually flows into like a business model. But if you signed up for our free macro tracking guide, learning how to track, well, that's very much in alignment with our business. So, or a little bit more. So we talk about like that I do find helpful and interesting, and I kind of will think about what freebies I'm using that better lead into it. But we've had some anyways, so those are the metrics I do kind of look at, and it helps kind of judge my thinking about what I'm going to do moving forward or if I'm going to change things. But it doesn't change how I'm going to write my emails.
Nice. No, that's good.
That's my
I really
yeah.
like that. I never, I, like, I don't think I've ever mentioned that around going into like the journey of people. And I actually really, I think that's really smart. Like you actually backtracking, like, okay, these are the, like, for example, like the recipes. Okay, these get a lot of subscribers, which is amazing. But is it related to the offer that we're going to try and sell them? And if it's not, then is it really the best lead magnet, or do we need to go down, yeah, need to go down a bit more a curated route where it's actually attracting more of the right people?
Yeah.
And I suspect that you having gone through that process is probably a reason you get a 70% open rates on 1,000 person email list for the long haul. So that's good. Do you have you tracked how like or do you keep an eye on how long it takes for someone to be on your like in your world or on your email list before they become before they buy from you at some point? Have you looked at that data?
I won't say I've like put it in a spreadsheet, but it's definitely something that is observational. And I've had it be 48 hours to 2 years.
Oh
And so
wow.
it's one, it definitely, I'm gonna say feels like, because I am a data person, but there are certain things that because we have people coming inbound from referrals, people coming inbound from socials, and people coming inbound from like Facebook groups or Reddit forums. And I think you kind of chat about this in your copy combine course about finding like those where your people live and going to find them, which is one of the things that we do. And if we go to, I've definitely had people from Reddit, literally supposed to be anonymous, except I'm not really anonymous on Reddit. But if they like, oh, you linked something and I went and clicked on it, and then I got a consult 24 hours later, she's a one-on-one client 5 days later. So that's a very short lead
Wow.
gen. But then I can think about our most recent launch that we did in July. And there are some people who signed up who have been lurking since before I started the cohorts. So that's 2022. Like never signed up for one-on-one. And we started cohorts in 20. Oh, shoot. We started cohorts in July of 2023. And so I'm like, you have been lurking a very, very long time. And then finally, like, you didn't ever want to sign up for one-on-one. You didn't sign up for the last 2 years of group coaching. And now you're like finally in it to do it. And so I kind of, from just a gut observational feeling, I think it's usually like 3 to 6 months,
Nice.
truly.
But I think the interesting part is in the, I guess, the deviations away from that, right? Because like
Yes.
I know a lot of people, they will look at someone who hasn't bought from them yet, who's been on the email list for 6, maybe 9 months, but that's a dead lead. Someone
Yeah.
you don't know. You don't know. They're not,
No.
if they're opening your emails, if they're still looking, they're not dead.
Yes.
Far
No.
from it. So I think that's a really good example.
No. Well, I think that's it. So at the end of, I know I'm kind of backing into this conversation, but my most unsubscribed email of 2025 was the one I sent the day after we finished our last launch. And I said, why haven't you unsubscribed yet? Just curious. Because I wanted to get an answer. And I was like, hey, if you respond to me, I will give you like a freebie webinar that we're doing for web internal members only. And I had 8 unsubscribes. And I was like, okay, well, like there are 8 people who just hadn't gotten around to hitting the unsubscribe button, get riddance by, because you're probably bringing down my open rates anyways, which was true because I went and like looked at every single unsubscriber and like it hadn't opened anything for months, and then they opened this one to unsubscribe, and I was like, cool, bye. You're killing my metrics anyways. But then the responses I got from them, which none of them were surprising, to be honest. Either it is a truly financial thing where it's like, okay, that's an area to problem solve. Like, what can I do that holds within our company ethos that matches that price point? And it might be that we just don't, and that's okay. Or number two is we are very time or call centric. Obviously, I like to chat with people. I'm not an email client. I'm never going to be an email coach. Or very rarely am I going to be like, hey, I'll just do email only. So sometimes our times just don't work. Like I have a number of clients in your neck of the woods, and I have to do early calls that match the UK time zones. And so sometimes it's just like, hey, that's never ever like that doesn't line up with them. And so thinking about ways to problem solve around that too. So that's, I got a lot of good feedback, and I got some people who dropped off, and I was like, bye, see you later. So
I like that. Um, can I go on a side tangent? Because like you
yeah.
mentioned how you get some leads from Reddit. What's that been like? How have you gone like what's like your process around that? Because I don't think I've not spoken to any coach who's gone and actually gone and got leads. Not even
Okay.
like any leads, like clients from Reddit.
Yeah.
I'd love to know a little bit
Um,
more about
yes. Okay. I'm gonna say something, and if somebody goes and steals this and does it well, I'm gonna hate you and mad respect you from this recording because I've been thinking about this for a minute. Um, okay, so again, if you take a look, I do a ton of niche guides. Well, who are the people who are always asking for mini guides or how to do something? It is the people of Reddit that are like, I want to know how to do this. How do you guys do it? And so I'm not like plugging myself. I'm just going, hey, question mark or question asker. And I usually have like in the nutrition, women's fitness, and Chronometer, which is my preferred macro tracking app. And they'll be like, oh, hey, like I really feel like I should be able to do XYZ with my macro tracking. But how do you do it? And I'm like, again, back to our list of questions. So if I see that pop up on Reddit, oh, it's immediately like goes on the list of like I think it's something that I want to make a post about. I'll make a post about it. For example, Do you know how many times people ask about how do you track pasta? Hundreds of times people ask about how you track pasta. You know what I have? A guide for how to track your fucking cooked pasta. And I'll be like, hey, you just need to like do X, Y, Z. But if you need some more, so I'll actually go ahead and like dump a decent sized comment. I'll be like, hey, user, blah, 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 step one, step two, step three. But if you have a different kind of pasta, here's some nuance. And I've got a full guide for that here that you might find a little bit helpful depending on what kind of pasta you have. And then I'll like hyperlink it. And then I'll get like 5 or 6 click throughs. That'll just go and click and be like, oh, look, they have a guide about pasta. Interesting. Oh, this is really detailed. Cool, cool, cool. And then they'll back out and be like, oh, these people do guides about everything. And then they'll like subscribe and then hit the link in bio, schedule. So that's why I think of like when I talked about earlier about Instagram being a business card and like a repository for all those things. That's really how I think about it. I don't necessarily think about it as like lead gen in and of itself. I'm not trying to like beat the Instagram algorithm. I also know that my content isn't necessarily for the Instagram algorithm. Like it's not always the most funny or the most viral, but it is the most helpful. And so it's more shared via referrals or linking to specific things. Not that I couldn't do something like that. I have, but it's just not my interest. So then in Reddit, if I ever have something where I'm like scrolling and I'm like, oh, I know I can answer this really well and better than all these other dinglings who don't know how to track their pasta, I will go ahead and be like, drop a comment with that. So I've got a point of authority. I've got a resource that they can link to that's for free. They can just not a free resource, I should say. They just like something they can go read immediately and then like follow, subscribe, lead gen.
Love it. I've never seen anyone talk about using Reddit to find
Oh yeah.
info.
So that, but this goes back to my problem here because some of you guys got to read the rules of the subreddit. If you go plug your shit and they say you cannot plug your shit, you got to be very careful about that, which I haven't been banned from anything, but a number of subreddits are like very clear about like what you can and cannot link to. So, yeah, that's it. I have been considering going, as we think about like what does the rest of 2025 and like lead gen look like differently, there's definitely some holes in the Reddit forums where you could create a subreddit that's a little bit more niche to your nutrition coaching. Because many of the, and this may not work for dudes, so whatever, but like, for example, in the female fitness space, and I coach a lot of dudes, but like, I haven't really played in the forums because everybody's just posting like veiny pics, being like, rate my body fat. It's gross. But all the female fitness forums were like, if you say anything about macros, you're banned. Like, then they're not banned, but they'll remove your post. But then they're like, you need to go ask our fitness. Well, our fitness is full of all the veiny bros, and no females want to go post in the veiny bros posts about their macros question or building or bulking or whatever. And so I do think there's like still room in Reddit to have a space where like that those questions can be answered in a more succinct way. It's just a matter of like, is that how I want to spend my resources and time? TBD. But I still think it's an untapped place
Ooh.
because a lot of like I've seen a couple posts, people post a question, be like, no, you can't post like here, you have to post in these forums. And then they'll go post it, and you can like go look at their posting history, and it got removed from like 6 different fitness groups because it didn't fit in their very strictly modded rules. And I'm like, well, it's actually a really decent question. That's a question I want to answer. But I can't answer it because the post kept getting removed, except for if you go post it in the Veiny Bros Reddit forum, subreddit. So that's my idea. Whether I actually capitalize on it, I don't know. But whether it needs to be capitalized on it, I don't know. But TBD.
Oh, that's interesting. I suspect there'll be a few coaches. If there's anyone who watches this will be their curiosity will be piqued at least
Yep.
to go check out Reddit. Um, but getting into the actual reason why I wanted to jump on this call, the launch that you did.
Yes.
Do you want to tell me a bit about sort of, I guess, what that latest launch was, like the purpose of like the thing that you were plugging, and then your approach to it, because you had a pretty aggressive approach right on the email side. Do you want to
Yes.
sort of like lay that out?
Yeah. So we again small group cohort coaching.
Mhm.
So when we do these launches, they're not evergreen. You can't just join at any time. It is always a very specific point in time that we have people join and sign up for, and then they go through a process together. So this July, we hadn't done one since March, so it's been a minute, 3 or 4 months. So July was all about the how to do the rest of the year. And I'm gonna be honest, it's an unsexy launch model. I don't do fat loss ever. I'm not ever, but like there are no fat loss cohorts for you to sign up for. If you want fat loss, you have to sign up for a maintenance or a muscle building cohort, and then you have the option to do fat loss in the future. So I've immediately turned off like 80% of my audience just because of that. And our July launch was all 6 month buy-in groups. So it was either 6 months of uh like performance goals and building muscle, 6 months of menopause and muscle building, because there's a lot of we have a number of clients who are going through perimenopause right now, and then 6 months of I had a men's and women's cohort that's just like straight up bro muscle building. If your goal is to build get as jacked as possible in 2026, we got to start doing that right now. So first off, that was the kind of the premise. So like we have 6 groups or 5 groups capped at 10 a piece, and the purchase price is somewhere between 1,000 and 1,400 USD, depending on which group it was, because a couple of them have some extra training plans included. And March was not a great month for us, to be honest. Like that launch, just we kind of got like 40% full, and we ideally, if we're getting 7 to 8 in each group capped at 10, that's a really good sweet spot of number of people to the coaching environment. 10 is great. 10 is also can be a little bit overwhelming, especially for some of my like younger coaches, because you have to manage a group of 10 people in an hour, which if you're good at it, great. If you're struggle with it, it can be a little bit hard, but also not always 10 people show up. So that was our sales promise. Like, hey, it is the middle of July. All you guys are coming off of American 4th of July. So we started, it was July 21st. So we basically two weeks that I planned to kind of go hard in the paint. I've been planting the seeds of like, hey, this is available, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming in prior emails, but it wasn't any, it was always like a sub note or the cohorts are coming or FYI, like here's the kind of layout if you are interested. And we had a kind of like a few early, like a pre-cohort offer that just fell flat. So I was like try to sell in like 8 weeks of like, hey, if you want to join the cohort, but you missed March and you want July, but you want something in between, like here's something you sign for. Like I think I had one person sign up for it, which is not worth the amount of time it took me to build the web page to sell it in. So I was like, okay, this is the midpoint of the year. Last year, and I've got good like comps from last year because we did a similar-ish offer last July or the same time frame, a couple 6 months and a couple not 6 month groups. And so like, okay, this is it, because we have had a lot of clients. Okay, guys, remember my premise of my company is I teach you how to build, I teach you how to do maintenance, I teach you to do fat loss, and I don't kick you out. You're allowed to graduate afterwards. Once people are in, they don't leave as frequently or as quickly as you would think, because they realize that the issue was never that they didn't know how to do the things. It was the accountability piece. So we have a lot of really, really high client retention rate once they're in the door. The downside is the buy-in is very high. So I knew I had to get a lot of people in the door for July, since March just wasn't what I wanted it to be. And so I was like, okay, well, socials are really flat right now, like across the board. Kind of chat with all teams. Their story views were low. Our engagement across our announcement posts, like anything sales related, was just falling flat. Everybody's in the like survive, not thrive July. So like, where do I know like the one place is that I still have really high engagement and high touch in? And that was emails. So I was like, I'm going to send an email every single day from the Monday after 4th of July. So I think it's like or Sunday after 4th of July. So 14 days. And that had been very helpful in the past, but I haven't always implemented it. And that's where I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to send, but that's my goal. Every single day I'm going to send an email. And so the first part was like trying to bounce back from 4th of July, like kind of more of a typical but relational, because everybody is coming out of 4th of July. And I was going to say, hey, this is happening. And my goal was that I would touch across, like, even though they're going to be the same format of stories and whatnot, I was going to make sure I touched on something that would point somebody into a specific cohort, because it's really hard to position yourself to sell like 4 products into one email. So then it'd be like, oh, something about my mom in relation to perimenopause and muscles. I'm sure she really didn't appreciate that whatsoever. And I had a men's group too. So I'd be like, something about my husband, again, not really appreciating being the subject of the email, but whatever, it worked. Or are you sick of trying to coach your husband? Let me coach your husband instead. And like, here's a men's group, because like it doesn't work when you do that. So I sent an email every single day for 14 days. And I had like 8 unsubscribes across, what was that, 14,000 emails, because I made them interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why I see them, because I opened them, or maybe they just marked as read unread in Gmail. And some of them were, not everything was a story. I had a couple like 7 reasons to plan a muscle building phase this fall, like very direct. Like if you are thinking about it, these are 7 reasons why you need to get in the door right now. And like there's some hard sales ones, but it's also a good value add. Or a couple of them were like, if you're on the fence, here's a couple of resources for you. So it was, I always try to give a little bit too. So even if I'm like, hey, I'm asking for your money, but also like, here's a small resource where it's going to lead into this. Or maybe we um, posted a guide about, yeah, one of the best ones was don't listen to online coaches, because, and then I showcase like, I mean, coaches,
Yeah.
you guys know, people ask for advice online in the Reddit forums, and they'll get a bunch of potentially great advice, but it's shit for them because they didn't tell you that they have a newborn child and they're not sleeping.
Yeah.
But then they're asking about how they do their calorie deficit. And you're like, oh, well, if you had noted that you only sleep 2 hours a night and you have a newborn, like you're an idiot for trying to be a deficit right now. So I kind of showcase that and like, hey, this is something, like, even if you're getting great advice, it might be shit advice for you. And so, but if you're tired of getting shit advice, here's where you're not gonna get shit advice for the next 6 months if you sign up for this cohort. So there's just, that worked out really well. And we sold in right around $30,000 of coaching. And I think at the time I messaged you, we were at 6,000, and then I closed like 20,000 the last 48 hours. Of course, everybody's like, you sign up at the beginning, you sign up at the end. And I would attribute at least 20,000 that from the email list,
Nice.
because I had a number of people going, and I had like, I really was on the fence, but then your email really hit me. Like, if I don't think about this now, I have to wait until winter. And if I wait until winter, and like I was able to put that sense of urgency in because there was an actual sense of urgency. So like, oh, I only have 2 one-on-one slots left, when in reality, nobody only has 2 one-on-one slots left. It was, this closes and I'm not letting him in. Like, you either start with the group, or you literally have to wait till October or whenever I want to have time to do another launch again. Um, and so I had a real sense of urgency, had a lot of takeaways, and I was like, look, guys, here's some relational things you are going to miss out. And the other thing that we did that I was able to weave in is I went hard in the paint about gathering um, client testimonials for leading from all the way. We started in April, and I had one every other Tuesday till launch week, plus or
Oh,
minus. Like,
wow.
not that that's a magic formula or anything, but it takes us a really long time to get testimonials because I only post them if they've been with us for at least 9 months. Sometimes 6 months, but like I really want to tell, like, part of our journey is like, hey, you're signing up for 6 months. You're not signing up for 12 weeks. You're not signing up for like
Yes.
4 months. Like, if you're signing up for 6 months, you're in it for the long run. So I'm going to show you everybody who did it for the long run, which means if I want to post something in April, that person has to have been a member for a year, honestly. Um, and so like we had mapped out like, okay, who are all the clients, one, who are willing to share their photos, which is 5% of
Mm.
the clients here. And then like not only willing to share their photos, but then also like willing to let us tell the story. Like, hey, Meg Corrigan, because she would not mind me calling her out. I was like, do you mind if I share the fact that you started perimenopause in the middle of our cohort, and then you also had a rocket ship build because we YOLO'd a little bit, but then you found out how to do it a different way, and it wasn't just photos. Like, if you go look at my story, you're like, wait, you have testimonials? Like, you just scroll, you would not think I had any testimonials, but it all says 11-month journey, Meg sees. And like the people who want to read that are the people, and then I like will leave those in the emails too. Like, oh, hey, you're feeling really hard right now. I really suck, said it Meg. Like, no, it's not as like kitschy as that just came out, but a lot of people can relate to that. Be like, okay, Laura, sure, you can do it because you're a nutrition coach and you've been training for this long and it's easy for you. And
Mm.
I'm like, oh, it wasn't easy for Meg C. She's got like 4 kiddos, or Hannah, who's got 3 kiddos and has to like work part time and do all these things. Like, all these people are also kind of making it work, and they're not doing it perfectly. In fact, they're doing it really imperfectly, but they're being 80% consistent about it, and they're still making great results. Like, at what point is 80% consistent going to be good enough for you? So, storytelling, action items, and then in like, if you don't sign up by July 21st, I'm not, that's it. Like, there is not, there's no like, oh, last minute spots. We're just done. So, yeah, it worked out pretty well.
I like that. I think it's a rare mentality that you have around like the business, around like the value of that. Like, because there would be, especially because you mentioned like the March intake fell flat. Like I know that there'll be some coaches who would be in your position where like, okay, like this July one went really well. Like they would almost be scared at like closing it off to more people. And like because you were just saying like once it's closed. But they would go, okay, I need almost like that fear of like missing out on the extra clients or the extra money. After that, um, like I don't know if there's even a question or even just an observation, but I think like, I mean, is that something that you've consciously had to do, or is it just like part of just the natural philosophy that you have behind like EPN?
Um, yeah, I would say it's more just natural philosophy because I would be pissed, honestly. If I'm
Yeah.
somebody who came in and I like made sure I got on the wait, which I didn't do a wait list last too, and we've kind of chatted about that, but neither here nor there. But the last two, or like if I came in and I was like, I was the first one in, and I knew there's only 10 slots, and you advertise there's only 10 slots, and then you just have like a couple people kind of running in. Like the biggest thing that I, especially in these group programs, is like you're about to meet your next nine best friends in this space. Like you might hate
Mm.
somebody in the group. Like that's very fair. Like there's a broad variety of personalities, but like you have these nine people who are going to go find maintenance for the first time. You are going to live, like you guys are going to all go through the same heartache about going, oh my God, I'm trying to eat more food, gain weight. What the fuck have I gotten myself into? Like, this is very scary that I'm trying to eat more food and gain weight for the first time in your entire life. And I think it kind of breaks the trust there if I'm just like gonna willy-nilly let people in a couple weeks in. I've done it like twice, and that's very extenuating circumstances. And I've also like prepped the group like, hey, this person's joining because they had emailed me before the launch and then they were on a 2 week cruise and they completely missed it. And I'm like,
Okay.
you could have a one-on-one call with me. You have, and I told them, I'm like, you are going to watch every recording and you are going to like be ready to meet the people in your group and like participate. Because it is really important for you guys to have this kind of like group dynamic that works well because you guys are in this, you guys are a team. You are not only accountable to me, but you're accountable to each other. Like you are in this next 6 months, like this is your crew. Like they are all expecting you to show up as much for them as you are showing up for each other. And I think it's important and it like part of like our group cohort model to make that happen.
Nice. I really like that. I've not seen anyone doing like that cohort based, um, which I think is really, like you mentioned, like that, like next nine best friends. I think that's something that a lot of people will be seeking. So I think that's actually like a really cool, like just selling angle on its own, which I'm sure a lot of people, well, obviously did well already. Was there anything that like, because this launch did really well, anything that I guess it sounds really cheesy, but anything like you learned that you think like, oh, like I'm gonna make sure that we apply that to the next one so that we
Yeah.
have like you have like more successes of this.
For sure. And I mean, I was like, yes, it went well, but we also, okay, like I got prep for this. Yes, we sold in a lot and I sold out 3 groups. I also had 2 groups that had 0 signups. So,
Interesting.
like we talked about all the good things.
Yeah.
Here's the bad things here is and part of this is I have a great team, but they have a lot going on in their life. One gal's pregnant, one gal just became a grandmother. One is like just going has a second business that she runs. Like there's a number of like life things going on in the team. And we kind of came together afterwards and I was like, hey guys, like and this actually comes back to it all comes back to the who you can sell into. I can't talk to people who are trying to get pregnant, and I cannot talk to people who are brand new to nutrition. No, I can't. Like I can try, but there's a degree of number of degrees of Kevin Bacon between me and that person. That is not something that is comes naturally. Like could I try and force it? Maybe. Um, and so those 2 groups specifically did not have a single person buy into it, but I also talked to the coaches of those 2 groups. I'm like, hey, like I can bring these people in as much as I can, but at the end of the day, they're hearing from me. They're
Yeah.
not hearing from you. And we've got a team meeting coming up or a live. We try to do at least one live in person because we're all geographically scattered per year. Ideally, I'd love to do more. It's just expensive. But I was like, hey, we got to figure out a way to get your face in front of people because I can only bring them to your door. But because, like one of my team members who's the one who's pregnant has it's first trimester. Like, as you know, that's not a great energy time. It's not a great time. We're like, hey, let me show up on socials and like relate to you about trying to get pregnant. Like, that's hard. And I was like, and she gets that. And my other team member was like, hey, I know that I was just had a busy summer and like I didn't really like put like there was not the person to kind of relate to. And that's like it wasn't either a bad nor good, it just was. And
Mm.
so I look at that and I go, okay, like if we sold out 3.5 groups and two just zero sell-ins, this tells me that we like there's a disconnect here, either a communications like well, it could okay, well, one it could be like nobody's interested in a 6 month group about trying to conceive or like intro to nutrition.
Yeah.
Which there's a positioning. I know there's a whole positioning thing on the intro nutrition thing that I know is a glaring problem because we're very boring about these things. It's just like not boring, but there's also a second piece that was hard was like there was a disconnect between the who they're talking to and who they're signing up with.
Yeah.
And so while they're talking to me, like, okay, I kind of like I'm here because I like the EPN ethos. I hear what Laura's saying, and she hasn't turned me off to unsubscribe to the emails, but I don't really know this coach as well. I'm not really certain who this person is. And that's something that kind of came up in a couple of the consult calls too.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, okay, like, is this a good fit for me though? But I like don't know that coach very well, or who like which coach is this? And so I'm like, okay, like here's a clear disconnect. And that's part of having a bigger team because I'm not just selling, I have to sell my team, right?
Yeah.
So not just our process, but the team and our process. And so that's something that we're coming back to the drawing board on to be like, okay, is this okay? Do we care? Do we not care? Like in this place, we're like, hey, the pregnancy board, like she that was it like, hey, we don't really care about this. Like we know we didn't put in or we didn't really have the gumption to put in the effort that was required for this. No big deal. Back to the drawing board. Like I'm not gonna sweat it, but there's definitely a disconnect there of going, okay, like could so essentially we sold out the ones that I could relate to the most.
Hmm.
The ones that I could not relate to as well or like struggled to maybe thread the needle, crickets. So
Yeah.
um I mean, still, I'm not upset about the launch. Like, it still went really, really well
Mm.
but it goes, okay, some of the newer product offerings are different ones that were a few more degrees removed with how I communicate about things. Um, did not go as well. And so that's part of like when I think about like what are some things that I could do better, it's a little bit matter of what can I do better as a team. And so thinking about how do I put my other people's voice in here. And I know a number of other coaches who have teams have kind of discussed this, like, oh, I regret I didn't do this, but like they're like, I regret naming it Laura Savino Coaching Company because it's not just Laura Savino anymore, it's or LJS or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not the case, but it is a little bit when I'm trying to do something that isn't me.
Yeah.
But my coaches do this really well. So that was like a good learning conversation. I don't think it's necessarily bad nor good. It just is. And we go, okay, like the disconnect here probably is, even though I talked about it, sold it, potentially I'm not one bringing in those people who are interested in those two things, and two, there wasn't that kind of like close the gap, close the door because they're like, oh well, this coach isn't really talking about these things right now or just isn't as active because summer kicks us all in the ass. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really insightful. I suspect that not that I'm going to tell you how to do business, but I suspect that part of it might be like just the not just like so much about the launch itself, but like maybe even just like the long-term
Mm-hmm.
relationship and the things that you were talking about, like for the 6 to 9 months before, were probably more aligned to the offers that you did sell rather than the
Yep.
ones that you didn't sell as well. So yeah, there'll probably be something around that comes into play as well. But like I said, I really like like just your whole approach to it because like I said, I speak to coaches and like something will fail and like I've got to just scrap everything or start again, rather than being like, no, let's take a look at it. Here's what did well. Here's what's not. Like, and like your whole thing was like, is this a problem that even needs to be fixed? Do we need to fix it? And it's like that's a very mature approach, and the question that I think more coaches need to be asking, because sometimes like the problems just don't need to be fixed, and you can just maybe you just need to move on to something else or take a different approach or take a different angle. So yeah, I really like that. I have taken up enough of your time, so I'm going to thank you because I know we're at the hour. So but I just want to say thank you for sharing and being like really open and honest with everyone. I hope that everyone who does watch this gets a lot a lot of value from this. I suspect that they will. And so, yeah, I appreciate your time, Laura.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
Whereas I am going to stop the recording now.